Steve wants to come.
I got one. What's up on the first day?
Oh, yeah.
All right, everyone, welcome, and thank you so much for coming here today to our first in-person RE Q&A. How many of you all have seen our info session that we posted? That's, a requirement for the application. Yeah, great. For those who don't know, we used to do those info sessions in person every other week or so, and this has kind of replaced that, so you all don't have to watch our entire presentation, and we don't have to do it like 10 times over. But this is the first time that we've gotten together to do anything like this since before the COVID-19 pandemic. So we're really excited to be here and in person today with you all and to answer your questions. We're going to go through a very condensed presentation of that information session, just in case you guys have any questions related to that information. So we're going to go through that first. And then we'll completely open the floor for you all to ask questions. We do have some swag items up here, so if you ask questions, we have some things that you can, get out of it. So to get us started, my name is Haley Bernard Handel. I'm the coordinator for staff selection and student leadership with the Department of Housing Residence Life here at UCF. So I assist in running all of the student staff selection initiatives, and right now, as you all are aware, we're really focusing on the RA application because when's that deadline?
October 1st.
Yeah, I love that. Wow, you all need to harmonize next time, but beyond that, that was really good. So really glad you guys are here. I'm excited to get started.
And my name is Tina. I'm the graduate coordinator for student self-selection and leadership, which basically means I assist Haley in pretty much all the things she just shared with you. I also co-advise on RHA and engage your student organizations and oversee the selection system.
Yeah, student leadership. All right, so who are resident assistants? We're going to start there just in case anyone is confused or curious or wondering what an RA actually does.
So we're going to talk a little bit about this. So when you hear RA, what's something someone thinks of? Just like one thing. A brave person.
Yeah,
Carrie, you can't. Carrie, we didn't introduce. Carrie is a resident assistant in our Nike community.
Yeah.
Somebody who helps facilitate a smooth running group of students.
Yeah.
Yeah, someone you can lean on if you need any information on like anything UCF.
Yeah, so something that's unique about the resident assistant role is you are going to serve in so many different roles. So we've listed some things up here. So you're creating and maintaining the community environment. So that could be, making sure you're keeping your eyes on your residents, checking in with them, seeing if they need a resource to be referred to, or maybe they have a question about financial aid and you're able to let's figure out what that financial aid office hours are, those kind of things. Maybe you're walking them to different resources like, hey, I don't know where the mathematical sciences building is. Like, do you know where this is? They're like, yeah, I'm actually headed that way. They're walking with you. You're really kind of creating that community in a lot of different ways. That can include one-on-one conversations. We call them intentional conversations. That can include community meetings. If you live on campus right now, hopefully you went to your first community meeting. That can include community engagement. So some examples may be a paint night, a game night. I know that Carrie is having a throwback night tonight. So if you live in Nike, go to it. Administrative tasks, so that can be incident reports, work orders, different tasks that you're asked to do by your graduate coordinator or coordinator in the office. That can be key audits, like things like that. Things that are just keeping the office day-to-day stuff going. You serve on a duty rotation, so each community does this a little differently, but we have two different kinds of duty. There's weekday and weekend duty. Weekday duty is 4:45 to 8 p.m. in the office, and then 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. the next day. You serve on call. Some things that happen on call, you look like being in your room, going to sleep when you are ready to go to sleep, doing homework, watching TV, all of those kind of things. Like, you do not need to stand there and wait for the phone to ring. You're going about your day-to-day lives, getting your rest, all that kind of stuff. But if phone rings, lockout, or my toilet is broken, and things like that, you're assisting in those kind of things. Weekend duty, very similar to that, but it is 4:45 to 4:45 the next day. 8 p.m. So 4:45 to 8 p.m. in the office, 8 p.m. to 4:45 the next day is on call. So again, that is sleeping when you're feeling like sleeping, doing homework, doing some things that you do on your day-to-day business. all that kind of stuff. The thing about that, you are staying in your community the whole time, so that will be true for weeknight and week end duty. And then you're going to be doing rounds throughout that. And rounds are basically walking the floor of each hall in every building in your community. And then implement residence community. I kind of already talked about this. This ties into the creating and maintaining community. So you're doing those intensive conversations, those community meetings, relationship building, and we're going to be campus partners. So.
All right, so time management is key. You can hear Tanner talking about these different responsibilities that we have, and I know who watched the RA takeover yesterday on Housing's Instagram. Did anyone see that? Yes. So someone asked a really good question: is like, can you manage all that? And Alex did such a great job of being very, very honest. Alex is a busy bee that we have on staff, and she does all the things. She's involved in a bunch of different organizations and leadership positions. And so Alex commented and saying, you know, it's a lot, and you have to manage your time very, very well. So she's very busy and does like a lot of other extracurriculars, and she still gets those responsibilities done. And that is because time management. She mentioned that she sometimes procrastinates a little bit and suggested to you all to, you know, not do that if offered the position. You should be giving approximately 15 to 20 hours a week to the RA position. And we say approximately because, as you guys may have heard, the RA position is paid on a stipend, not hourly. You do not clock in, clock out. You don't like track your hours, because we know that as an RA, there's going to be some weeks that you are going to be working move-in for us. You're going to be working like long shifts, multiple days in a row. You're going to be highly involved and instrumental in our move-in process. It's going to be a lot of hours. There are going to also be lighter weeks for you. Later in the semester, you've finished your intentional conversations for that time period. Your door decks are set. All you have are your one duty shift, your 2-hour staff meeting, and maybe a one-on-one with your supervisor. And so that's not going to get anywhere near 15 hours for that whole week of work. So we're going to pay you consistently every 2 weeks that same amount, whether you're doing a lot of work one week or not so much work the next week, because we want you all to have consistency in your pay. And we know that that hour amount is really going to fluctuate during that semester. Now it's up to you to work on when that time is going to be manageable for you. If you know that you have a huge midterm one week, you should not take a bunch of duty shifts that week. You should not plan all of your roommate agreements the same week as a project. So that's up to you to kind of work with your time, and it's definitely manageable when you do that effectively. So I kind of covered a lot of different things that you do during those times. Time spent away from your community should never be more than the time spent in your community. As part of your job, you're creating the community on campus. So if you are spending the night at Bestie's house like every 3 days and then coming back here just for a night for your duty shift, you're not really around to create the community. Your residents should know who you are. They should notice, they should know your face and be like, oh yeah, that's the person I can ask for help when I see them in the hallway. They should know that you're like around and here to help. So it's important that you're here to build that community and not just invisible or like a ghost RA or something like that. You can't have another job outside of the RA position, and it must be approved by your supervisor. So if you have a position right now and you want to do both, that's okay. You can be hired to it. Just make sure you bring that up with your supervisor at like the first meeting to let them know, I have this outside job. This is what I'm doing. Here are my hours. Is this going to work? Can I get your approval for it? You don't have to quit and then ask and then get back or anything. Just keep the job and then you can work with them. It is going to play into it is going to come into effect if you are struggling in the RA position or not being able to make your duty shifts, your staff meetings, or your grades are slipping, and you and your supervisor may have to have the conversation of, is both jobs really the best thing for you right now? What can we do to support you to make sure that your academics are our first priority, and make sure that your well-being and your balancing is working out okay? Does that make sense? Sweet.
All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about our living learning communities. We offer a bunch of different living learning communities. I won't guarantee that all of these you're going to see next year, or all the ones that are happening right now are still going to be there next year. We do renew our contracts with our LLCs every year, so we never know until kind of applications or selection starts. So these are our most common LLCs. We have Excel Compass, Future Educators, Lead Scholars, Nursing at Nike, UCF First, and Healthy Nights. These are basically communities that students will live in that hall or floor or building, whatever it may be, and have shared interests within these different areas. One thing we'd like to note is on your application, it's important to know that we do ask you about LLCs. If you are interested and have experience in an LLC, say like you're a nursing student and you are interested in being the RA for an LLC, it's important that you note that on your application. That being said, if you are just thinking it may get you like one up on your application, like, hey, if I submit my application, I select all the LLCs, they'll know I'm like super, ready to be on RA. That's not necessarily true. We're going to see your application the same whether you select our LLCs or not. You will be asked about your LLC selections on your interview. So if you're not particularly interested, don't feel pressure to select any on your LLC. So.
It's really awkward when we're in interviews and we see, you selected that you're interested in the Excel Compass LLC, and the interviewer is like, oh my gosh, tell me why you're interested in this LLC. I'm so excited to hear about this. You're like, yeah, I love Microsoft Office. Excel is my jam. I'm just really deep into this worksheets. I can do all the functions. Don't worry, I love it. That's gonna be super awkward because Excel Compass has nothing to do with Microsoft Office. And so if you're just trying to skate by being for sure, I know everything about every LLC, I want to do it all, it's going to get awkward. So definitely look into our LLCs. We have them listed on the application. We're also going to send information out if offered for an interview. We'll even have LLC information at the interview itself. But don't feel pressured to be absolutely, I'm interested in every LLC, or don't feel pressured to have to find one you fit into. It's not going to score your application any better than anybody else's. So just be honest. If you're not interested in an LLC, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, and there's no preference given to LLC selections or anything like that. We just look at those 4 LLCs. All right, so housing communities. You may have, if you watch the info session, know that our RA contracts are 1-year contracts. We don't hire just for the school year. We hire from May to May for every single position. Now, if you're well, I'm an out-of-state student, my favorite thing is going home over the summer to visit my family, I don't think I can work with that. That was me. I was out of state and I went home every single summer, and I really looked forward to that time out of state from where I went to college. We have an exemption process that we send out every single year for those who don't want to work summer. It's just not guaranteed. We have not yet had it to where we have to bring a lot of people back that asked to be exempt from summer, but we do hire you for the contract and you're agreeing to the full year contract because we have to make sure that our facilities are staffed. We won't bring you if you don't want to be there if we don't have to. You know what I'm saying? So with that, we still have you hired for the whole year, whether you work in an academic or annual community. An academic community we only have open from, so for some of them, August to May, but who in here was here for summer B? Yeah, so we have some of our academic communities open for summer B as well, so half of summer, that's half and half. Annual communities are open year round. There's no stop or end to them. They're always functioning and going. So when you have an RA who's working in an annual community, but they're studying abroad for summer, and they can't work over that summer period, we're going to bring someone from an academic year to fill their spot just for the summer. So when we say we hire you for the whole year, regardless of community, that's what we're kind of talking about. We'll place people who want to work over summer in an annual community or in a summer B community if you want to work just half the summer, which I know Tanner did as an RA. We have just a lot of different options for you in that. So a lot of people get stressed out with the 1-year contracts, but we have a lot of flexibility with it. And there's a difference between academic and annual communities.
I always enjoyed working summer B because I worked in the bigger community, which meant I left, my community in May, and then I would come back to my summer B community in June, and it gave me about 6 weeks off to just kind of I'd be taking online classes and still be doing things. I had other jobs and all that kind of stuff, but it gave me more time to just decompress from the RA position. So. All right, we're going to be talking about the next steps in our application process. So as you know, our application is due October 1st. If you are here, you may have checked out the website and the application in general. That's at ucf.ereslife.com. We require you to watch our information video online. It's basically a little bit of this, but it's very, very extended, a lot more information. If you've watched it already, that's amazing. If not, do that pretty soon. There are application questions about that information session on there. You are required to have 2 references. We recommend that one be UCF affiliated. It's not a requirement. We just love to see that you're making connections very early. A lot of you are first-time college students this semester, and in your first semester, you're making connections with your professors, you're making connections with your RA. UCF affiliated really goes a lot of ways, so that may be alumni, professors, advisors, your resident assistant, people like that. Student organizations, RHA and NRHA. These rate recommendations. The references are due the day after the application is due. That's because we want to give your reference at the very least, a full 24 hours to complete the reference form. The reference is a reference form, so they don't have to have like written a whole reference page kind of thing to submit. They'll receive a form that they fill out on their own. The thing about that is they are not going to receive that until your application is submitted. So if you want to give them more than just 24 hours, submit your application as soon as possible and they will get that email almost immediately. So that's 2 references. There's about 5 short answer questions, the personality questions and job preferences. This is where we were talking a little bit earlier about community preference and LLCs. Those are going to be those job preference questions. Take time on those. We take those into pretty big consideration. That being said, you know, if you're putting something on main campus, we're going to consider you for pretty much all the communities on main campus. We hire based on the community, so you're hired into a community. You can't necessarily accept the RA position but decline your community. So if you're offered a position in our Lake Claire community, but you weren't really interested in Lake Claire, you can't decline and be like, let's try somewhere else. You would be declining the RA position as a whole. We want you to be interested in being an RA, not interested in being an RA in a certain community. You can edit your application until you're finished, so go in. Obviously, make sure to save it. There's a save button at the bottom, so you can edit, but you will have to edit a lot more if you do not save it when you're coming back to it. So make sure you're doing that. But your application is not submitted until you click submit. It also does not automatically submit October 1st. So keep that in mind. We have that a lot every year where we're like, oh, I thought the application was going to submit on its own, like it's completely done. We don't make a whole lot of exceptions to our policies just to ensure our application process is consistent. You have to go in and submit your application. And if you're having issues with that, issues with eResLife, let us know on the Melbourne ResLife selection at ucf.edu. We will show that up here a little bit later. We can fix almost 100% of the issues that you'll run into, and it doesn't happen, but we can fix them after the deadline. So
with that, we work in an office, so like relatively standard Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 jobs, and the application closes on a Saturday. So keep that in mind, that once again, if you do have issues, if something crashes, like if your computer specifically has an issue and you're waiting until Saturday at 11:15, I will promise you I'm not sitting at my email waiting for that email from you, right? So I highly suggest submitting it at least Thursday night before at the latest. That way, if you have any issue, I'm still in office. Tanner may be in office. Tanner doesn't go into office on Friday. Yeah, anyway. At least I will be able to help you. And if we can't get that same thing resolved, I will know that your application was finished before the deadline and you're having a situation. And I am much more forgiving at that point than I am at 11:39 on the night it's due on a Saturday, when I should be at home, having some sleep and like enjoying the rest of my life, right? Additionally, these personality questions, if you all have seen them, some of them have like, one of the questions is like, work now, play later, play now, work later. I don't want anyone to think like we're immediately cutting everyone out who said play now, work later. We want to make sure our staff and our communities are diverse and that our staff matches the UCF student population. So we cannot have a full staff that's work now, play later, because, you know, we just may never get to the play part. We just may never have the fun aspect. We want a good balance of all those personality questions, so none of them are scored. None of them have any impact on who's gonna get hired first, or like if one is ranked better than the other. They are just to ensure that each community have a good mix of every type of personality. So I know a lot of people sometimes stress out on those personality questions because they think that there's a right and a wrong answer. I promise you there's not, and we don't feel one way or the other. All right, RE position requirements. These are just the basic requirements just to be able to be eligible to apply for the RE position. You must have a 2.5 overall cumulative GPA by the time you start. So a lot of people have been emailing with questions of, you know, I'm not a first-time college student, I don't have a GPA, so my GPA is like 0 right now. You can just put that in there. You can put 0. We're not going to just filter it out. I run grade checks totally separately from the application, right from the registrar's office, and I won't pull that until after each semester that we're looking to hire people. So if you're, you know, looking to be hired in May, then I'm not going to pull that until right before we hire in February, which is for our May start date. But if you're maybe a second-year student, maybe a third-year student, so on and so forth, and you're looking to maybe start this spring in January, I'm going to make sure to pull like now, and not now, but when we go to hire in like November, so this semester won't be on it. So you have to have a 2.5 by the time you start, not right now in your application. That's the same thing for your number of credits. You have to have 24 completed credit hours, 12 of which need to be from UCF or Valencia. So if you're coming in with credits and you're taking 12 credits now, and it's your first semester, you would be good to start in the spring technically. So keep that in mind. Student conduct, we do run everyone's conduct through the student conduct office. Because you're a student leadership position, we want to make sure that you all have a clear conduct record, and that's really important to us because we entrust a lot of responsibility on our RAs, and we want to make sure we're doing our due diligence on the back end, that we have really responsible employees on our teams. And then you do have to go through a background check. This is with UCF HR, so that is actually done once you've been offered the position and the position is contingent on a clear background check. You just have to fill out a form. You don't pay for anything. I know some places you have to pay for a background check. We take care of the cost on our end, but just know that you have to have a background check, which means you need a social security card or social security number and a government ID. But again, that's once we offer you the position as well. If you're an international student, we do hire international students, and we work with UCF Global to get you a social security number. A question?
If you're a student employee, you have to do it again. If
you're a student employee and you already have it on file, it's up to date for this year, because I don't know how much you all know, but we just switched from our business models. So we switched to something called Workday. So if your background check is in Workday, you wouldn't need to do it again if it's within this year. If not, you would need to do it again. It'll be a case by case, and we'll kind of talk to you individually about that. Yeah.
So if you're a first-time college student and you want to be hired for like spring, then would you like not really qualify because you would only have 12 credits at that point? Like maybe you'd be signed up for 24, but they wouldn't be completed.
Correct. So if you haven't finished 24 by the end of this semester, you wouldn't be eligible for the January start date. You would be eligible for the May start date. If you're bringing in credits, dual credits from elsewhere, that's totally fine and that counts. You just have to have 12 from UCF, and then you'd have to bring in 12 from Valencia, literally wherever else. Yeah.
Is that information in our application, or is that a separate, like you guys check that?
We pull it from the registrar's office. So the question was, I'm going to try to, because we're streaming too, I want to try to redo the questions too. The question was, how will we know if you have your different credits? We pull all of that information when we pull your GPA from the registrar's office. So we'll see all of your outside credits pulled in and all your UCF credits. Your questions.
Alrighty, so interviews. So you've made it past the application stage, you're invited to interviews. Interviews will be taking place, I should start with when you're being invited to interviews. You're being invited to interviews October 24th if you get invited. You will have to go on to the online system by Thursday, October 27th to schedule your interview. We already have the dates. Interviews take place November 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. So keep that in your mind right now. You know, maybe don't schedule a
international?
I don't know. I was gonna say family reunion, but like who's having family reunions in the middle of the week? I couldn't really think of anything. You guys are generally all in classes at that period of time, so we're never going to require you to come to an interview during a class or anything like that. You're gonna be signing up for those interviews, so you'll get like time blocks that you can sign up for, and it's first served, first come, or first come, first served. That being said, if you have difficulties with your schedules, we're going to work with you to make sure you're reaching out to us at Best Life Selection. We will have interviews at our Rosen location. Anybody here live on the Rosen campus? We have a commuter over here. So if you live on Rosen, we will be going over to Rosen on November 4th for interviews. That being said, you're still welcome. Like say you have a class over here and your interview is like later in the day, you're still welcome to sign up for main campus interviews. You're not required to participate in Rosen interviews just because we're going over there. We just know that, the commute, the bus, I have a brother who goes on the shuttle to Rosen. It only goes certain times of day, and so interviews can be held between 9 a.m. and 7 p.m. It's a very large amount of time for 3 days because we do interview a lot of people. We're interviewing about 300 people over the course of 3 days between just the two of us. Our entire staff gets together to work on these interviews, which is amazing to see. All of our coordinators, all of our grads, our assistant directors, our office assistants, everybody who's represented in our communities is going to be participating in these interviews. So keep that in mind.
This room and the room next door are like completely transformed into like conference style interviews. It's a pretty amazing process.
So you may be back.
Yeah. All right, and so just because we like to just give everything that we can to you all to prepare and do the best that you can in interviews, we have some interview tips for those who have come in or who are streaming. So we ask a lot of situational questions. That's tell us about a time when. This is going to be all based on your experience. So there's not going to be some sort of predetermined right or wrong answer, but we will ask you questions. And many of them may be multifaceted. Tell us about a time when you had to overcome a challenge and what did you learn from it? You only tell me about the time you overcame a challenge and you didn't tell me anything about what you learned from it. That's not really answering the full question, right? We also always provide the questions on the table for you. And I want to encourage you all to take a moment after you answer every question to reread that question and make sure that you get it all. Because I don't really care whether or not you can hear that question, sit there and think about it and fully process it. I want to know about your experiences. I don't care about if you can memorize the question I just asked you or not. I want to learn about your experiences and what you learned from it and how you're going to benefit the RA position. So that's why we include the interview questions literally printed out right there in front of you. So we're going to do all of that to help you. Help yourself and read it, each question, because you would be amazed how many people sit there and only answer part of the question, just sit there that's all. And you're like, you're so right there. So situational questions, make sure to kind of just prepare for those. Think about your different experiences that you can bring to the RA position and practice the STAR response. We love a STAR response. That is your situation, you give the context or the background. Your task, you give the challenge that you faced. Action, explain what you did in that situation and follow it up with the results. Take the benefit from your action in that situation. This is one answer. So keep that in mind when answering those interview questions, that you want to make sure to hit every part of this.
Alrighty, now we're going to go over our timeline. You're welcome to take a picture of this at any point if you'd like it. There's going to be another one that's going to be a little bit more of a visual aesthetic, if you're more of a visual person. But I'll talk through our timeline a little bit real quickly. So for our spring hire timeline, as we kind of talked about earlier, not everyone will immediately qualify for that spring hire. So make sure, if you don't qualify, don't necessarily add it to your application. We still will be checking it, but you'll be able to list whether you would like to start in the spring or start in the fall as a preference on your application. Our offer letters will go out November 29th, 2022. You will have until December 1st to accept or decline that offer. We hope you accept. Your HR process then starts almost immediately, November 30th to December 8th. And then you'll be starting to move in / start that December/January. Our summer 2022 new RA hire, this is going to be the bulk of our hires. I don't know if we've mentioned that at all yet. We have about like 8 or 10 vacancies for spring hire. So if you're not hired for spring hire, we have about 100 different vacancies for our May to May contract that start in the summer. So don't take that and be like, I didn't get it, like this isn't, you may still get it. Like that hire process is much larger. We have a candidate waiting area update. So around the same time that our spring hires are being hired, you will be notified whether or not you're still in the candidate waiting area, which basically means you've done everything right, you're still in the process, and you're just waiting until the next time we are ready to hire applicants. Your summer offer letters will be notified February 13th. Day before Valentine's Day. I don't know if that's a good way to remember that, so keep a lookout on your email for that day. No matter what, if you have started the application process, you will either be notified whether you're staying in or out of the process on that day. So you will receive an email on that day if you haven't already been hired or taken out of the process. So if you haven't, reach out to us because that would be an error, because we email everybody no matter hire or decline, or what we also have is an alternate pool. So you are either hired on that date, we decline your application, or you are in our alternate pool. Our alternate pool is very large. You do also have to accept that, so that process is not on there. I think it's on the next one. There's a date in which you need to accept, decline, or accept, decline your alternate position. On the next slide, and I'll show you that in a second. I might as well go over there now. But our alternate pool is very large. We pull from that alternate pool starting that February all up until November the next year. We are pulling from our alternate pool very often to this day from last year's process. So that also means that if you don't necessarily get an offer on February 13th, that does not mean that you will not get an offer. I don't know if our friend Carrie here wants to share when she got her offer to be an RA. She was pulled from our alternate pool in August of last year, has been an RA since then. So it happens.
We are like 4 people 2 weeks ago. Like, yeah, literally always pulling. And so keep that in mind also when you're looking at where to live next, because if you sign an off-campus lease that you can't break, then I call you in like June or August. I'm like, oh my gosh, hey, we have this great RA position for you. Are you ready? And you've got to either 1, pay $1 billion to break your lease, or 2, you have to just decline the offer, and that's so sad. We do have agreements with Night Circle and the Point, so I can break your lease at Night Circle or the Point without any negative on you. So I take care of that we take care of that on our end, and you don't have to worry about it. So if you're living on campus, like on UCF community managed campuses or Night Circle or the Point, you don't have any problems. So keep that in mind when selecting, and know that like a lot of our alternate pool ends up moving off campus at these different apartments. And so if you do have an on-campus or a Night Circle or a Point lease, you're going to be in a better position, because as I start going through and I have to like keep getting all these declines because people can't break their leases, you're going to be that much more eligible to be in the position.
So as I was mentioning, you have to accept your decline your position or your alternate pool position on the website by February 15th of next year, 2023. And then we start our HR process that March, and then training would be first or second week of May that you would start. So, yes. Does anyone want to take a picture of this one real quick? Because it's a little bit more of a.
So if you are pulled from the alternate pool and you get a spring offer, what does that do to the contract timeline? Like, are you still considered a May to May, or does that change the dates of your contract?
Yeah, so if we're pulling from the alternate pool, that's only going to, like, it wouldn't be for a spring position. Does that make sense?
Well, if you are hired for spring, what does that do to your contract timeline?
If you're hired for spring, you're hired.
Okay.
Like, you would stay in the position. You don't have to worry about getting rehired for the May to May position.
Okay.
So once you've been hired to the RE position, you're hired. We do have a returning application that is super different from this. It's nothing like this. Totally different process. And as a spring hire, you don't even need to do that. We just keep you on as long as like you have good performance, and then you would participate in the returning RA application that next year. Yes.
Is there a minimum number of credits you need to have while working in the?
To be an RA, yes, it's 9.
Full-time 12.
Full-time
Yeah, I think it's
12, yes. I'm sorry. Full-time, you'd be a full-time student at 12 hours. If like you have some sort of like extenuating circumstances, we do have different processes for that. But like 99% of the time, it's gonna be, you need to be at 12 hours full-time.
Hey, what about over the summer if we work that semester?
That's different. You don't have to be taking any classes if you don't want to, but you can take classes. It's up to you. So, yeah. Now we have questions. We do have one more Q&A session that's in person at the Student Union on September 27th. If you just didn't get enough today and you want to come back, you're welcome to. We also have 2 virtual ones that are coming up, and both of these are going to be actually led by RAs. Tanner, I will be present online, but RAs will be attending those 2, and you can directly ask questions to current RAs and ask them all about their job, and you can ask basically whatever you want and get like a real life experience from an RA. We can pretty much answer like what you do as an RA, but I think it's always best to hear it right from them. So we're gonna open up the Q&A portion. I know quite a few people have been asking questions. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so you can ask questions. I know a couple of you have been asking questions while we were doing things. So if you did ask a question, you can come up and get a swag item after, because I'm not gonna be able to remember you like right now. But if you want to start asking questions, we'll answer them and you can get a little swag item. Yes.
So how does being an RA like interact if we have undergraduate research opportunities?
Tanner.
Great question. I was actually a research assistant in my undergrad. It really goes back to that time management. I know my last year I had an additional job. I worked at the RWC along with being a resident assistant. My last year I had to leave my additional job because I took on a research position. I was a teaching assistant. I had a committee chair role, and I was also applying to grad school, which is super fun. If you guys are all ever planning to do that, talk to the graduate coordinator in your community. They have done it very, very recently. So that included like taking the GRE and all that kind of stuff. So it goes back to like time management. If it's paid, I know that that's a little different. Mine was not paid, so I didn't have that issue. But if it's paid, it would just go through the same process as an outside experience. That needs to be capped at 10 hours, and it does need to be approved by your supervisor. But making the time for it, getting your stuff done, you know, if you have a lot to get done as in your research position that week, maybe not scheduling all of your intentional conversations that week, and vice versa.
All right, we have different starters. We have a stadium cup, a coaster, and a set of Post-it notes. What would you like? Nothing. Okay. All right. Yes.
I have a question about something on the application.
Mhm.
What is a mixed classification student group? Is that just like a mesh of like first year transfer? Like that could just be any ability?
Yeah. So if you're interested in, you know, if you're like in the honors college and you specifically want to be like in the honors college, that's going to be one area. But if you're just open to kind of a mix of first and second, a mix of LLC and non, you know, it's kind of up in the air for you, that would be the mixed classification. What slide item do you want? We're going to like hold them all up. We have that. Oh, okay. We have the RE Stadium Cup. We have cute little house posters. And then we have a pad of sticky notes, which are super cute too.
Oh, actually sticky notes.
Sticky notes, we've changed our mind.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I think you were first and then I'll go.
So for the intentional conversations, how do those look like for like the different communities? I know that you know, it goes back to like time management, but do you usually set apart like a certain time throughout the day or throughout the week that you would have those intentional conversations, or do they happen as just residents say like, hey, I can at this time?
A little bit of both. So definitely don't like turn down your residents if they're like, hey, like I have free time and I want to like chat right now. Like you can count towards an essential conversation if you haven't done one with that resident yet. You can also set up times. Like I know that I always did like a doodle. Like they sign up for times. They'd stop by my room. I'd go into the community room. They'd stop by the office when I was on duty, those kind of things. So it is a little bit of both. Like the only time constraints is just like, you gotta hold yourself accountable for a lot of it. I know that in my community, I have different like, based on community, you can have different like requirements set by like your coordinator. I know for me, like we were supposed to have 8 done at every staff meeting, and my graduate coordinator did a check to make sure we were doing 8 every staff meeting, and that was just so that I got 56 residents in 2 months. I need to get all of them done. They were having me do them as I go and keeping me more accountable on that. You can set that up for yourself. If your coordinator doesn't have that set up for you, you can maybe make an intentional, I don't suggest this, but making an intentional conversation day where you are door knocking, you are present very, very often, trying to get folks of them, like you are dedicating that entire day to that. So it's a little bit of both.
And can they also be done like during the events and programming that we post for our communities and course?
I will say yes and no, because your intentional conversation it's a pretty hefty conversation. You're having a full conversation with your residents. Maybe if that's like right after you have your community engagement, maybe your community engagement is set up so that you're having conversations with them throughout. But if you're like playing a movie, I don't really recommend also having intentional conversations during the movie. It just kind of gets into that little bit of a conflict, so.
It can also be kind of awkward if like we're all here at our community engagement and like I pull Tanner aside, it's like her and like, so like how are you struggling in class? Not great. Please open up all of like you're going through and any resources I give you while everyone else is like doing a craft.
There's a particular reason why they are one-on-one conversations. If you do want to talk about like even like the difficult things that are going on and make sure you are referring resources as an RA. So like maybe that person needs some additional resources like CAP or tutoring. That may not be the conversation that they feel open to having in the middle of a community engagement. So just keeping that in mind. And yeah, I think I had pointed to
When you've already submitted your application, are you still able to access ResLife or at least check the status of your references?
Yes, you are, and we recommend it. You will get an email notification when like they are submitted, but we do recommend like say you haven't had an email notification, you want to go in there and just see if it's submitted and reach out to them and be like, hey, like you should have this, check your junk email, all that kind of stuff, and get that submitted on time. Unfortunately, your application cannot be reviewed by our team unless both of your references are submitted. I know that that's really, really hard for sometimes, so make sure you're choosing people that are trustworthy and know that you have asked them and they have the time to do it. Don't just list like a previous boss, don't check in with them because they're gonna get this email and they're gonna be like, I don't know what that is, and then they're going to move on, and you will need to have that reference form for your application to be completed.
When you go onto eResLife and you go to your references page, there's like a little icon next to both your references. If it's like a stopwatch looking thing with a faint yellow in the background, it is not done. If it is a bold green circle with a black check mark, it is done and you are good to go. So you can continue to check back there. There's also a button that says send notification. And so if you're like getting to that moment and you're like, bestie, like not only should you be emailing them, but you can also continue to like send it to them. Don't annoy them though. Like, 'cause I know that if I were a reference, person who was doing a reference, and I got like 30 in a day, I'd be like, they're just not gonna happen this time. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
you just did it. Okay. So much access on my side of things that I was like, I think that like I can do it all.
What's that gonna be more?
Do you want to go?
Sorry, I have a couple. I'm just going to go quick.
Maybe it answers someone else's question.
So when you were talking about exemptions for summer term, is there like an exemption option for like if you just need like a week or two because you already have like presentations scheduled?
So there are 3 options. There's not working, there's working the full summer, and then there's working summer B. Like say you just have a really heavy week at the end of May, I would suggest either choosing not to work during the summer or working summer B if you like need that full week off. That being said, like if you are working and like you need a full week off because you're going to a conference or you're going to present somewhere or something, that can also be something that you communicate with your supervisor and you take that time off from your job. If it's like that week or so.
You're offered time away just like any other job. We had an RA over summer while working actually fly to Dubai and present research. So like we do want to give you the time, not just to fly to Dubai and but like to take a break from your job. Just like in our jobs where we ask off for time, we ask time off from work, you guys can do the same. We allot a certain amount per semester and things like that. So you just get
We call them nights away, and they're like approved, just like we were talking about earlier, where like you want to be present in your community. We do track how many like nights you are away from your community, because there are times where just to be completely transparent, as an RA, the fire alarm goes off at 3 a.m. You kind of are expected to jump into your role at that point and make sure students are getting out of the building, you're getting them to the muster location, all that kind of stuff, so. Do you have any more questions?
Yeah, I have one more.
From one point.
So the interview has a dress code, but like, it says like dress business casual-esque. If we don't have those kind of clothes.
Or UCF Spirit.
Okay.
I think it also says in there UCF Spirit.
Yeah, so business casual or UCF Spirit, that is gonna be whatever's most comfortable to you. So if you are not wanting to wear like a polo and slacks or a skirt or a dress or whatever, you can wear jeans and a UCF t-shirt. We just never want it to feel some type of way that if you show up more comfortable to an interview that you're not trying hard enough, because we know that people are all in different parts of their life. So we created the business casual or UCF Spirit because we assume that at this point, hopefully you all have at least a free t-shirt from UCF, right, that has been thrown at you. If you don't, like, just take a walk. So we want to make sure that even if you are most comfortable in casual, you still feel as though you are dressing up just as much for the interview, because we know interviews are very stressful, and you can, unfortunately, we compare ourselves to others, and so we don't ever want anyone to come thinking that they're not prepared for the interview because of the way they look. So that's why we've set up business casual or UCF Spirit, so that either way you're dressed up for your interview, but dress in the way that makes you feel most confident. Don't feel like you have to dress in business casual because like it's an interview and that's the thing to do. Do what you're gonna feel most comfortable in that interview to do.
To an appropriate degree.
To an appropriate degree. If you have to ask, should I wear this to an interview? The answer is probably like a suggest not. Right here.
I have two questions. I'm pretty sure you already answered this first question, but as far as the references from UCF, do they have to be a professor?
No. Anyone in the UCF community.
Okay, my second question, if you were offered the position and the staying at one of the communities, are you rooming with another RA, or it depends on where you are?
It depends. A vast majority of RAs actually have their own private rooms. However, there are a few communities where you may be living with one other RA, or there's also the option that you may be living with a student as well, or some students in a student room, where your room is an RA room. If you are with students, you have your own bedroom. You're just sharing that community space with other student residents. But most of our RAs are private rooms.
So if you pulled up like the dates for like when you when they released like if you got hired or not. But like when it comes to like the last step with like human resources stuff in the background check portion, do you find out if you've been accepted as soon as like that's all cleared, or is there a set date that everyone finds out if they've been cleared?
There's not a set date. It's with our new system, also a very complicated process. If you are, say, hired on that February 13th date, you start that process, it may take up to 2 months. Like, I know that that's the eyebrows raised and that's a lot, but like, you're going through HR and the other 100 brand new RAs are also going through HR at that time. So it does take some time. It'll come back kind of one at a one. And then I believe we notify individually based on that.
So you will get an email from the Res Life selection email that says like, hello, thank you for your patience, congratulations, you're approved through our process. And no matter like at what point that happens, your start date isn't changing. So say you're like one of the first people to go through HR, you went on September 17th, you get hired, no, this is not gonna happen, just pretend, like you get hired like March 1st, like 2 months before your start date, you're not starting until May. Unless we have you actually filling like a vacancy and like it's a special situation. Even if you get hired like early, you're not starting until the start date that we send you, which will be in May.
So I have like 3 questions. What's it called? So for the weekends, the hours were from 4:45 p.m. to the next day on call. Does that mean I have to be in my room from 4:45 to the next 4:45 day?
So 4:45 p.m. to 8 p.m. you'll actually be in the office, sitting in your community office. And then from 8 p.m. to 4:45 p.m. the next day, you have to be just within your community. So that can be in your bedroom, that can be chilling with your bestie RA, in the building next door. That can be like you sitting in the office if you want just a space to do homework that's outside of your room. If you want to be in your community center and like do some sort of like drop-in game thing, you can do all of that. You have to remain in your community.
That's a great time for intentional conversations, just throw it out there.
Yeah, and also like, it's not like you're gonna be doing like multiple duties back to back or anything like that. We suggest not to. Carrie is not one of those. So we suggest like not taking multiple weekend duties back to back, but
Oh, so there's gonna be like a day that we could have to ourselves?
yeah, so like if you're doing a weekend duty on like a Saturday, you'll come at 4:45 to the office, get the phone, you'll hang out at 8 until 8 p.m. and then you will go to your room, go to sleep, hopefully, and you will come back at 4:45 on Sunday, give the phone to someone else. So if you're doing a weekend
There's
duty,
also like a set amount in the semester. I don't think I mentioned that when we were talking
yeah,
about
so it's
earlier,
not every Saturday or anything like that. You may have a Saturday a month, or
Okay.
a Saturday and a Friday in a month.
You're like 12 this semester.
And then, he mentioned in his question earlier, so you can choose to only work summer B, let's say we get accepted for summer, or the hiring process allows us to work summer, and then we can choose to only work summer B.
You can ask.
Ask.
You are all hired May to May,
Okay.
and you can, through a form, ask very nicely, and we will do everything in our power to give everyone their first choice, but it doesn't always happen.
Okay. And then my next question is, I saw in the online, it said that it would cover, the RA position covers the housing, and it also sends bi-weekly payments, and then you said it was a fixed payment because.
Yes.
So do you know what that would be?
It's different when you live in different communities. I thought you were about to answer.
Oh,
You
no.
just shot right up. I was like, do you know? Okay, so it's different per community, because if you are living, our most expensive community is Northview. That is like resort style living. That living accommodation is different than the community living accommodation you may get in like Apollo and Libra. So we take what the overall stipend amount for the RA position is, we subtract the cost of housing, we take what's left and divide it by a bi-weekly paycheck.
Okay.
So if you live in a more expensive community, what you get in pocket is gonna be a little bit less than someone who lives in a cheaper community, because we also wanna try to make that as equitable as
Do
possible.
you know what it ranges?
Yes, so you will be getting a bi-weekly paycheck between $150 to $250. It is within that range bi-weekly, depending on your community. Yes.
On the weekend timing, since we have to stay within our community, does that mean that we're still allowed to like go out to run or like exercise during that time? Because like if we're in like the running club or stuff like that.
In your community.
In our, okay.
You can run.
Yeah.
Right. You joke, but we also have external rounds where you walk a circle around your entire external community. So
I
if
know
you
Nike
want
has
to do
this.
it and then like drop, your dirty partner off and be like, all right, I'm gonna go run it like 4 more times, like you can do that.
Nike had a point where they were like timing themselves on their duties, and they were trying to do the fastest duty run. So if you're on like track team and you're trying to be like 45 seconds, you better do it all, and you better like do it all correctly. But we can make things fun, right? We like to make everything fun as much as we can. There's gonna be serious situations, and then there are gonna be assignments and tasks that we have to do that maybe we're not like thrilled about. Like no one here is like, I can't wait for that work order. Like yes, I'm so pumped, but we can try to make things as fun as possible while we do it.
Okay, my question is, so with the application, as in spring 23 and summer 23, I feel like you already know you're not gonna have 12 credits by, by spring, then you should apply for spring.
Yeah, just don't drag it over.
Yeah, it's just.
And once again, that's not something we like weigh differently or anything. We just quite literally, when looking at who'd hire for spring, won't consider you.
Okay.
And then that is the extent that it goes.
My question kind of relates to this. How much of a role do our rankings for the communities play in like what community we would get? Like, are we usually, I want to say like guaranteed, let's say the top 3, or it depends on like how many communities you put in there, they'll consider you for all of them, and it's like need based.
If you are selecting anything on main campus, we will consider you, for everywhere on main campus. Now, if I am first starting out and like creating my staff, and I see Tanner in my application pool, and I'm hiring for Nike, and Nike's like the bottom of her list, I might be like, okay, like I'll hold off on that one. I'm not like her first choice, but she seems like a great applicant that I think would benefit the staff that I'm trying to create. And I might go back and I might look at all these other applicants, and honestly, there's just no one like Tanner. Wow. Tanner is so great, and she's just filling this niche role, this like personality that I just think is gonna bring our whole staff together. Like I'm missing this puzzle piece. At the end of the day, I'm gonna do what's best for my staff. So I'm gonna offer to Tanner. But on the flip side, if I see Tanner's application and her first choice is Towers and I'm hiring for Towers, I'm like, oh, done. Like she's on my staff. She's gonna be one of my first picks. She wants Towers. Towers wants her. We love each other, right? So at the end of the day, like we're gonna look at it and we're gonna try to consider it. But when I'm creating my staff, I don't have staff. So as a coordinator who has a staff, hi Alyssa. When I'm creating my staff, I'm gonna put the preference on creating my perfect staff. If I can't find someone else who's going to fit that mold or fit, you know, the I don't know, community that I'm trying to create, I'm gonna take my staff's preference over your community preference. This only doesn't apply for Rosen. If you like picked everything on my campus and you're like, absolutely not, I will not be traveling to Rosen every single day, all of my classes are here, we are not gonna be like, you're the best person to go to Rosen, like get in the car, get on the bus, and get going. We will not do that. That's not very fair. And same thing vice versa. If you only pick Rosen, if you're a hospitality management major and you're like, I do not want to drive to main campus or drive to Rosen to go to class, we will only consider you for Rosen. That is the only exception to that. Okay? Yeah.
Okay, do you have any advice for those who really want to become an RA, to are you looked at as a strong candidate, or basically just want to do it wrong, or any advice during the interview process? Any advice?
Yeah. Kara, I know you have a thing at 5, so if you've got to go, you're like good and I'll turn the camera off. I just want to make sure that she gets to do her thing. I suggest and always say that when I interview as Haley, not as a coordinator for staff selection, just as Haley, like a human being, when I go to an interview, I have what I like to call pocket experiences. They're experiences that I think show a bunch of different characteristics of myself: leadership, crisis management, maybe like having people like argue and trying to like mediate those situations, like different experiences that can maybe fit in a broad range of questions. I rehearse those. I say, okay, this one time I was doing this, and then this is what happened, and so then I have to work through this situation by doing this, and I know that this is going to fit for leadership, for crisis response, for whatever, so that when they ask me a question pertaining to any of that, I have this awesome experience that I know is going to fit it, ready to go. And I know that I've thought through that whole experience, and I remember all the important details about it. Now, don't get caught doing that same experience for every single question because it fits so many. So find like 1 or 2 of your best experiences that you think showcases like you as a leader, your character, whatever, and process through those situations. Think through them, say them out loud, talk about like what the process was, your main points, and just have them ready for that interview. That's what I really think is important. I also highly suggest going to the grad or coordinator of your community or your floor's RA, ask them about the job. You would be surprised how many people come to some of our interviews and are like, wait, you have to serve on duty? What do you mean? And it's like, you just didn't even, okay. And so like, make sure you like really understand the role that you're applying to. We also always recommend getting involved in your area council and NRHH. The more you know about housing, the easier some of those questions are going to be. Not that you have to have housing experience at all, but you're going to understand a little bit more what a lockout looks like. You're going to understand a little bit more what a community engagement is if you have attended your community engagement, right? The best ways to learn what an RA is doing is like interacting with your RA. You're going to see firsthand what they're doing. So those are like my top things that I think will prepare you all the most if offered an interview. Yeah.
So let's say I apply and I don't get the job, so like if you do get the job, you have like guaranteed housing. But I know in time that I didn't get it to apply to other housing, like as like a student.
Yes, you will know February 13th if you're in the alternate pool or not.
Okay, I
I
don't
believe
know.
that the lottery happens prior to that, so we still do, if you are interested in living on campus next year, still apply to the lottery. Especially if you're just like applying to the lottery and then you find out you're an RA, we're gonna take you off of that list regardless. So, breaking your on-campus agreement is one of the easiest things because in order to assign you to your RA room, you gotta break all the other agreements. So, that's a yeah.
In the Plano, did you have a question?
But you asked me, or?
I thought I saw your hand raised, but that's okay. Yeah, go ahead.
So if there's like, if you're on call and there's an emergency, do you go, is there some kind of like senior leadership you go to, or are you?
Oh, yeah. So like, you could not be more supportive than on call. When you're on call, not only are you on call, but at the very minimum, one other RA is on call with you. Not only that, there is a graduate coordinator on call. There is a coordinator on call. There is an assistant director on call. And then between our associate director and our director, one of them, of the two of them, are always on call.
So yes.
You will never do any of this alone. You may like physically respond with your duty partner, just the two of you. But if anything were to like need some more support, the grad has to be within 15 minutes, the coordinator has to be available within 30, and 45 minutes for the AD, and so on and so forth.
But also, the grad always answers the phone.
Yes.
Like, it's not just like, hey, we'll give you a call back in 15 minutes. It's, if you are calling the grad on call phone, the grad on call is answering that phone no matter the time of day.
We have a cell phone that is the grad on call phone. So you will have one
very
phone
loud.
number. Yeah, the Infer community, and we have to have that turned on at all times. And then if the grad is so like, one time I was on call as a grad and a pipe burst. So not only did the two RAs come, I came, the coordinator came, the assistant director came. Like we had at 4 a.m, an entire community staff here of on-call people to support. So you will literally never do anything alone. That's a good question. Yeah. Sorry,
What
you're
if what if we're sleeping? Something happens.
Yeah,
The
that
phone
ringer
is
better be
very
on.
loud. I'll say it again.
We get like penalized or that like strikes really.
If it's something that's happening repeatedly, that is you not living up to job expectations that you've agreed to. A trick that like I've been told is you put the phone in your pillowcase. That way, when it vibrates, it will literally vibrate your brain. And like that better wake you up.
How does it vibrate? It should be ringing.
It should be ringing and
at the
vibrating. Never
top
turn the
of the
radio off.
room. I keep mine right next to my head, like while I sleep. I'm also not a super heavy. I've had this conversation with an RA before where like they missed a call, they slept through the call. Like it does happen. Like I want you to know, like we are all humans first. Like things do happen. That being said, it is something that you are required to do as an RA, and so you are going to be held responsible for that. Start working in systems of like, maybe start practicing. You get that offer and you're like, I'm a really heavy sleeper. I need to practice now. Setting alarms at like weird random times to be like, what is the amount of noise that is going to wake me up from my slumber? What is going to function? Those kind of things.
And again, you're not on duty like all the time. Like when like the grad and coordinators on duty, we're on duty for a week at a time. So for an entire Thursday to Thursday, no matter what time that phone's ringing, we're picking it up. The RAs are only doing like one night shift at a time unless you're purposefully doing like 2 in a row or something like that, or there's like a situation. You're not going to be doing multiple nights in a row. So it's not going to be like throughout this 1 month, you're going to have 15 nights of on call. You're going to have like a handful. So you just need to really make sure you answer.
Oh, so like for example, let's say I was on call Monday and Tuesday, I'm allowed to go eat like dinner on a Thursday night?
Yeah, so you're only on call from the 4:45 p.m. to 8 a.m. on like the one day of the week that you've signed up for. And you sign up for all your duty shifts like months in advance. Like at the beginning of the semester, that's the first thing you do is sign up for your duty shifts. And they're just gonna be either, that every Tuesday is your duty night, or in some communities with bigger staffs, they can do every other Tuesday, or they just pick sporadic days. So you're not like on call for a week at a time or anything like that. It's literally just the 4:45 p.m. till 8 a.m. the next morning. And You drop that phone and you run away. You go wherever else you want to go. Let's go back there.
In like your guys' experience, did you have like a problem like with like heavier course loads and being an RA? Like ever did that?
We have everything. We have STEM, we have musical theater, we have hospitality, we have everything. All of our RAs are like quite spread out in their majors, and they all handle it very, very well.
It's kind of like a you responsibility at that point. You're gonna have to stay on top of your stuff and fulfill your job responsibilities. And just like any other job, if you're not filling your job responsibilities, that's conversations you're having with your supervisor. But they're gonna have those as educational conversations. They're gonna have those as development conversations where you are like, I'm falling behind on these responsibilities. All right, let's work together. Let's create some goals. Let's figure out how we can make sure you're getting things done. I think that Diego, and then we'll pop back here. Oh, just kidding.
So you say you worked at the RWC.
I did.
Also,
Very, very long time ago.
but also, you were also doing the RA position.
Mhm.
Okay, so I actually have a question, because I work at the RWC right now.
Yeah.
And I was wondering for the summer, because I have to stay here for the summer as well.
Mhm.
So that's what.
Yeah, so that would just be a matter of preferencing on your summer preference if you're hired as an RA, because you would want to work during both. Is that what you're saying?
Well, for the RWC, what they're doing now is like we have to work either summer A or summer B. We have to choose one if we want to keep the job.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I'm choosing summer B, that's what I'm asking. But like, I'm willing to work both too, that's fine.
Yeah,
That's
so then that would kind of just be like your preference, like do you want to work while you're also working at the RWC during the summer? And kind of going off of that, I think that the dilemma you're kind of bringing up is like, where do you live that other part of the summer? So I would just make sure you're being prepared and communicating to both your supervisors, listing on your preference the reason why you're preferencing a certain community, because we take that into account too. Say, I want to work summer B because I have to work at the gym during summer B, or I will lose my employment, that kind of thing. I need a home during summer B. Those kind of things can be listed on your summer preference survey, and we're going to take that into account very much so.
I mean, if anything, like I could always ask to work summer A and summer B.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and then if you're working summer A, but you are not working summer as a resident assistant, the thing about that is you will not be in your space during that time. So note that that does mean that you will have to find another home to live in. Maybe that's subletting, maybe that's living at home for a couple months if you live close enough and that kind of thing.
And as someone that did the RWC and the RA, did they interfere at all?
Occasionally. Training for the RWC happens the 2 days before classes start, I believe, still. That was always difficult because I was during move-in. But again, that just took my responsibility of going to my supervisor and communicating to both of them, communicating to my RWC supervisor, explaining that this is move-in, this is a heavy time. Both of these people are going to know like about the other jobs. When I went to my RWC supervisor, they're like, they understand the capacities of what an RA does during move-in and all that kind of stuff. I didn't get really like a free release from anything. I basically had to work with my boss here at housing to ensure that I was working evening shifts and I was going to training in the morning. So again, it takes a lot of personal responsibility, but that kind of comes with like having jobs and different responsibilities in your life. And if you're having to get to a point where you're making difficult decisions and you can't fulfill your responsibilities, that's an additional conversation of like, should I have both of these positions right now?
Thank you.
If we were selected for the spring, how would that look like for our winter break, since we do have November training and other things?
Yes, we have made a change this year. Normally, we actually host an entire week-long RA training in December. We are actually not doing that for the first time this December. It really keeps our RAs from being able to like take a break and go home if they're given those approved nights away and whatnot. So if you're hired in the spring, it's going to be like a little juggling act because we're going to have to wait for the person leaving at the end of that semester to move out of their space for you to move into your space. So either you will move in at the end of the fall semester, or potentially you may be coming back a little bit early. All of our RAs start on January 2nd or 3rd, as long as, barring any excused absences that they already have pre-approved from their supervisor. And so you would come in at that point and start moving into your room at the very, very beginning of the spring semester before classes start. And so we can get you into your RA space. But it's gonna be like a little juggling act because, well, one group of students are moving out and moving on. We're then bringing in the new students to move in and to get started. So we're gonna be playing this juggling act. And then during the spring in January, it's when those new RAs are gonna be having a condensed training just for the new staff instead of a department-wide RA training.
So I know that obviously everyone's taking exams, at the end of December and at
Yes.
the end of April. What is that like for the RA? Because they both have to have their exams, they have to prep for them and they have to do their duties. So
Yeah.
how is that like?
We're a little bit of a broken record. It is personal responsibility. There are going to be move-out shifts that you're required to work as an RA. You may be required to work 3 move-out shifts in a 5-day or a 7-day period. You know that your finals are on Friday and on Tuesday of that week. You should probably not work your move-out shift on like Thursday and Monday, right? So you should be taking your move-out shifts on Wednesday. Maybe you take a move-out shift after your final when you're like said and done. Okay, I don't have to stress about it anymore. I'm gonna go to my move-out shift. Or you take one on the weekend. So when we want you all to put your academics first, and we want that to be a priority. But we don't want that to be I just can't work move-out. I have a final. What? You have a final for 1 week? Like, I don't think that's gonna fly. So you need to take your own personal responsibility of scheduling what's gonna work best for you, communicating that to your supervisor, and getting your RA expectations done while still meeting your academic expectations.
Just like you'll never be scheduled for class, you'll never be scheduled during your final exams.
Yes.
It just is a matter of like making sure you're taking time outside of your scheduled shifts to study, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then we get to choose whether or not you want a spring break or a winter break.
It's the same thing as like nights away. So like when you're picking duty at the beginning of the semester, if you're like, I absolutely will be going home during spring break, don't pick duty on spring break, If you celebrate Hanukkah but not Christmas, maybe you're like, oh, I'll take duty on Christmas because I think this year they overlap, but just like, asterisks. Maybe you're like, I'll take Christmas because I'm not gonna be spending time with my family, but I know for sure I will be going home for Hanukkah, so I want 3 nights away during Hanukkah, and I want to not take duty during that time. And then those who celebrate Christmas, maybe they're gonna take the time during Hanukkah. So you as a staff are gonna be creating these schedules. You just need to vocalize and talk about what your needs are, vice versa. Some, like our academic communities, do close during winter break, but that does not mean you get to go home when everyone moves out, because we do have students who live here over winter break as well, and we need to make sure that should they get a lockout, they don't have to just sit outside of night camp until January 2nd, So
I think that something to like add on to that is like our responsibility is a lot. So taking it into account that like you're going to be taking on a role that like means that you may have to work at times when you maybe didn't want to work. We're going to do everything that we can, and your supervisor are going to do, your coworkers are going to help you through all those times where like, hey, like I really want to go home this weekend, I want to go to Disney this day, like can you switch with me, can, like any other job. But there are also going to be responsibilities that you're going to have to fulfill. I know that like me personally, that's something that's hard about this job, just being like completely transparent. It's not like the, gym on campus that like December 17th, it's closed. There's no other responsibilities. Like there's a chance that you could work during winter break or spring break. You work normally. Campus doesn't close. The classes are canceled, but campus is still open. And as someone who works in a very integral part of campus, like people still need to live and function in their homes during spring break, especially like residents who aren't going anywhere during that time. And so that's been always something that like is hard for me. Is like there's no guarantee that you're not going to work during spring break, but making sure you are advocating for yourself, communicating this to like your coworkers. I know like one year I had a coworker who like never really cared about like going away for spring break or anything like that. I was in a long distance relationship. I always spent that time to like go visit them. Me and that person, we had a system. It was like, okay, if I get scheduled during spring break, you got it. And like, yeah, I'll take this one because I don't want to like do this or things like that. So you make those bonds and like those connections, and like your coworkers are gonna help you through those times too.
I want to say like sometimes working like the shifts that seem like the least enticing are sometimes the most fun. I know one, yes, one, they're quiet. Two, I know like I try to make it really fun. So like when I was on call as a grad, I've been on call for both Halloween and for Super Bowl. So on Halloween, like I reverse trick or treated. So I went to each community and like gave out candy and like had some fun stuff with them there. And then on Super Bowl, I actually went to Party City and for like $1 had those big stadium cups for the Super Bowl, and I give those out to all the RAs serving on duty. And like they set up in the office like a Super Bowl watch party. Like just because you're sitting there doesn't mean you can't like have fun or like do things. You just need to be able to stop whatever you're doing and go respond. So like don't take a test while serving on duty, but work on homework, work on a project, do whatever you need to do, as long as at any moment you can like put a pause in it and then come back. Any other questions? Awesome, thanks everyone. You guys can all come up and get some swag if you want. Thank you everyone for coming. We have we have another one again on the 27th at Student Union. And then we have those two which are going to be streamed live where you can talk directly to RAs, which I think is always really, really neat to be able to like just ask them straight up your different questions that you may have that maybe you don't want to just ask us. So yeah. We're pretty cool, but you know it's different to ask an RA.
They're like way cooler.
100% way cooler.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
I think I'll find